Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. Thank you for tuning in with me on this lovely Thursday when you are listening, or if it's a Saturday, a Friday, whenever you're listening to this. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I surely am. It is a Monday afternoon, it's 12:15 on a Monday when I'm recording this. I'm recording it a bit early. Like I said, I normally do, just because I'm a busy college student. I work 2 other jobs besides this, and I got a lot of classes to take, and it's a busy week. I have a few exams, I have a paper, and school is kicking into session. I love how during the summer, I don't know if any other college students relate to this, or former students, whatever, if you're in high school or something, you're like, oh, I want to go back to school, I want to grind, I want to do schoolwork, I'm so excited. And then the first week of college, you're like, yeah, the semester is going to be so easy. And then it kicks into gear and you're like, well, it's not. But that's okay. This has taught me a lot about time management and productiveness, something that I'm not very good at all the time. Actually, no, I'm very good at it. My planner is here. I write down literally everything. But that's besides the point. School is taking into session, and I want to get this content out for you guys. I want to make it the best I can be. And I just know that if I was trying to record this on like a Wednesday when I have classes, and I'm stressed. I do have class today. It's not till 4 o'clock, which is super nice. But I just want to get this recorded for you guys, because y'all are like my family, a little college football family here, if you will. I'm looking at the speaker levels on my audio recording, and it's like, do. I'm very energetic. I'm not drinking some coffee right now. I got a little iced coffee with some almond milk. We're fancy like that, I guess you could say. And yeah, it's just a great day to have a great day, everybody. I feel like I want to listen to annoying motivational speakers right now. That's like, woo! But I'm just in a really good mood. I don't know. But we got a big show for you guys today. Like I said, Sunday's podcast was an instant reaction to everything. And then, yeah, today we got big rundown. The Big Ten is back. We'll get into all of that. We'll get into some other big news. Florida State head coach Mike Norvell has coronavirus. Some other big news to get into, as well as more political talk. Register to vote, people. We will also preview this weekend in college football, because the SEC is coming back. It's week 4. The SEC is finally returning. And we will end it off with a top 10 Big Ten football games to watch this season. So without further ado, let's get into our rundown, everybody. Like I said, I hope you had a great weekend, a great time. I absolutely did nothing but watch football, and it was fantastic. So segment 1, let's get into it. The Big Ten is back, people. As I said last week, I was recording it on a Monday, and I was like, I pray that they don't release this news before Thursday, and I was so close. Like Wednesday afternoon they did, and I was like, dang it, like, yeah, but that's okay, everybody. College football is, back in the Big Ten, which is kind of crazy. They were the first Power 5 conference, I want to say, that postponed their season. We thought it wasn't going to happen, but as soon as they did that, there was a lot of backlash from Nebraska, Ohio State, fans all over the country wanting college football. And as the season has kicked off, and there has been a lot of safety, actually. I want to say, I apologize for being such a pessimist about this. I feel like in our world today, we're just adapting to coronavirus in and of itself, and we're trying to go about normal life. Today, Boulder did announce they were going online for 2 weeks, but I think that when it comes to college football and these billion-dollar industries, they really are finding ways to make it work. You see the NFL doesn't have fans And it is a little weird having no fans in the stands for most of the games, but honestly, the fake crowd noise really does help. And I'm apologizing for being such a pessimist. It is working, and I'm very happy it's working. I'm so happy we have college football back. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I feel like I apologize for being a pessimist, but when the Pac-12 and the Big Ten postponed their season, I was kind of like, oh, that's it. Like, everything is canceled. Like, no football this season. And here we are. There's football this season. But the Big Ten is back. Woo! On Wednesday morning, the waiting finally ended. There was a lot of speculation for the past week. Was it going to return? President Donald Trump, which we will get into, wanted the season to return as well. And after sources confirmed to Yahoo Sports that the Big Ten will be returning to play in the fall of 2020, this is according to Yahoo Sports, the conference made it official. The league is expected to start on October 24th, which will allow for a conference title game and a potential spot in the college football playoffs. So this alters everything. We'll get into this, but this alters so much. And with this news, there was news that the Pac-12 was considering bringing back their season in mid-October, but here's a tweet from Pete Thamel. He said, Wisconsin AD Barry Alvarez said the schedule will start October 24th. They will play 8 games plus 1. Teams from the West and East will all match up, so there will be a conference championship game, and all East versus West teams will play. Everyone plays 9 games. Here is what Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren had to say in a conference statement about the decision. Our focus with the task force over the last 6 weeks was to ensure the health and safety of our student athletes. Our goal has always been to return to competition so all student athletes can realize their dream of competing in sports they love. We are incredibly grateful for all the collaborative work that our return to competition task force has accomplished to ensure health, safety, and wellness of student athletes, coaches, and administration. This decision has been expected since the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors met on Sunday night with optimism that perpetrated throughout the league. Days went on and information evaporated. They were frozen. Coaches were frozen in anticipation. In typical Big Ten fashion, this was simultaneously stunning and not surprising at all. And when the news leaked over a hot mic by Nebraska President Ted Carter, sources said that multiple programs around the league met with their players in the past few days and outlined a plan on how they'd practice and be ready to play by the October dates being reported by the media. There's caution that hinged on the votes from Big Ten Council, Operation, President's Commission. However, if you guys didn't have, as I've talked about, football is a billion-dollar industry, and this was going to happen. They were going to find a way to play, and this is a better option than playing spring football, like I said, because now the Big Ten does have a chance to play for the conference title, which is pretty dang exciting. The Big Ten was the first major conference to make the decision to postpone the fall, and now is the first to reverse it. The Pac-12 followed the Big Ten in postponing, but has no intention of following the Big Ten back to the fields, as the Fires in California and Oregon aren't allowing those teams to practice. As of now, 3 of the 10 FBS conferences will not play this fall: the MAC, Pac-12, and Mountain West. I want to talk about something I heard in my class on Wednesday. I'm a part of a sports rating class, which has one of the CU football players in it, and he was talking about how this is his first fall in, I think he said 14 years, where he's not playing football. And he talked about how he's not seen his family in a year and a half because of football commitments, and how he is saddened and he doesn't know what to do now that there's not football. And from a Pac-12 fan's perspective, I want Pac-12 football to come back so badly. I'm aware that I was very skeptical of football happening. I'm aware that I was probably the first person to ask. I'm like, it's not coming back, despite being a college football lover and hosting a podcast about college football. I was very skeptical. And now that we're seeing the success it's having, yes, some teams have had to postpone games. Memphis, Tulsa, we have seen outbreaks. When handled right, you can have college football. And if anything, this past 3 weeks has shown that it can happen. It doesn't feel as weird as it does. I think we're all getting used to the idea of no fans. We see with the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL. In MLB, we are seeing that no fans is weird, but you have gotten used to it. And like I said, with these billion-dollar industries, they're finding ways to work around it. And if there's money involved, they can make it happen. And the Big Ten did want to play. These players, you see Justin Fields protested. Jim Harbaugh, head coach of Michigan, protested. All these players were very upset, and they found a way to make it happen, which is very exciting. The delay from Sunday's meeting to announce Wednesday's announcement came from finalizing details, answering last-minute questions, and making sure the messaging around the reversal came across better than the initial messaging. So if you guys remember, there was a lot of controversy around the Big Ten's decision because they kept going back and forth on their word. They kept wanting to see if they could make it happen, and people were just like, make a decision. So what changed in less than 5 weeks? Medical advances, fan blowback, which was huge, and the political pressure as well, which I will get into later in the episode, which I've touched on many times. And there was a successful start of college football elsewhere, especially in teams like the ACC. This all contributed to the league reversing course. Sources said that the presence of daily rapid testing, which has led to a successful start in the NFL, will be used in Big Ten and will be a key part of the league's messaging why it is moving forward. So there's been a lot of medical advancements in July when the season was postponed. We thought it'd be canceled in general. We didn't have the testing we have now, and obviously there's a lot of controversy around, is it fair that these NFL players and these Big Ten players get rapid testing every single day when the elderly and essential healthcare workers don't get it as fast? There's a lot of concern around that in these colleges, and that's a topic for another day. But as you can see, the medical advancements made in the community for coronavirus have allowed for this to happen, which is very exciting. Now, as we know, college football playoffs is going to change completely now that Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, they're back in the mix for the Big Six. It's very exciting to see how we will move forward. And after a whirlwind month, the conference announced on Wednesday that it will play, like I said. They released their 8-game regular season schedule, which will begin on October 24th, and the full slate was unveiled Saturday morning. This marks the third time the conference has had to assemble a schedule for the fall 2020 season. There will be daily rapid testing for COVID-19. The conference is attempting to cram nine games for each team over a 9-week span. The 9th game for each team is slated to be played on December 19th, the day of the Big Ten title game. For teams not in the title game, they will play that day against a corresponding team in the other division. This means the second place team in the East will play the second place team in the West. The third place team in the East will play the third place team in the West, so on and so forth. Let's look at the schedule. For week 1, we have Nebraska and Ohio State. If you guys remember, Nebraska was trying to play independently this season or trying to join another conference in a way, which is very interesting. They were the big pushers for this at the beginning, especially Scott Frost was really pushing hard for Nebraska to have their own schedule. So we have Nebraska at Ohio State, Michigan at Minnesota, Penn State at Indiana, Iowa at Purdue, Illinois at Wisconsin, Rutgers at Michigan State, Maryland at Northwestern. So big takeaways from this week is that Nebraska wanted football, and they're getting it with a very strong opponent against Ohio State. It's really interesting. My boyfriend is from Nebraska, and I was talking about this, and he was like, I hate Ohio State so much. So he's very excited for that game. Nebraska's going to made a lot of noise to try to get Big Ten football back. There were Nebraska players who even sued the conference. And it's just funny because now they get to go to Columbus to face the best team in the conference and one of the best teams in the nation. The most competitive game of this weekend will probably be Michigan's trip to Minnesota, which we will get into. University of Michigan enters year 6 under Jim Harbaugh without a whole lot to show for it. Maybe this is the year. Joe Milton will bring a lot to the Wolverines. And then we have Penn State. They are opening their season against a sneaky tough team in Indiana University. They went 8-5 last year. And this could be a tough one for Penn State, especially with the game in week 2, which we'll get into. The big game in week 2, we have Ohio State at Penn State. Always one of the most exciting matchups in college football. We have Michigan State at Michigan, Wisconsin at Nebraska, Northwestern at Iowa, Minnesota at Maryland, Purdue at Illinois, Indiana at Rutgers. Those are the games for week 2. And this is a big Halloween game. Ohio State's trip to Happy Valley are always really competitive games. As you guys know, that is probably the game of the year for Penn State fans. I have a acquaintance, I guess you could say, who goes to Penn State, and all over her Instagram and Snapchat is this game every single year. It is the big game. This should be no different, especially even without the unusual whiteout crowd in attendance. There will be no fans. But that does not mean that the fans will not be tailgating, as we have seen with different schools. This game will definitely have an impact on the college football playoff, which is very interesting. And we have the Michigan State rivalry, which very fun game. Week 2 usually happens later in the season. One of the biggest rivalries. And this is Michigan State's first season under Mel Tucker. If you guys don't remember, Mel Tucker told the Colorado Buffaloes he's staying with them. And then 2 days later, he signed a contract with Michigan State. Kind of sad. This is their first season with him after 13 seasons under Mark D'Antonio. And Nebraska gets another tough opponent with Wisconsin coming to Lincoln, Nebraska. Week 3 slate, we have Michigan State, Iowa at Iowa, Maryland at Penn State, Purdue at Wisconsin, Rutgers at Ohio State, Michigan at Indiana, Minnesota at Illinois, and Nebraska at Northwestern. So Nebraska has won the Big Ten West 3 of the last 4 seasons, and they have their chance to open the season 3-0. The Badgers will be favored home in Purdue once again. Fun fact, the only Wisconsin game I've ever seen live. If you guys did not know, Wisconsin was my dream school for I don't know how long, probably 10 years of my life. Wisconsin was the school I wanted to go to. I didn't get in. Shocker. Really good school. Hard to get into out of state. I also just didn't have the grades for it. I planned to transfer there after my freshman year, whole thing. And when I visited, we had Purdue, Wisconsin. That was the game I went to. It was very fun. I actually wrote my admissions, my Why Wisconsin essay on that. And guess it didn't work. Still salty. So maybe I won't watch this game. I'm just kidding. But after this, we have Ohio State and Penn State. They will have, less games. Buckeyes will host Rutgers. They are now coached by Greg Schiano, and Penn State will host Maryland, a team that they beat 59-0 in Maryland in 2018. So after a very tough few weeks for the teams, they will have an easier slate. I don't want to say because anything is possible in college football, but In week 4, we have Penn State at Nebraska, Wisconsin at Michigan, Ohio State at Maryland, Iowa at Minnesota, Indiana at Michigan State, Northwestern at Purdue, and Illinois at Rutgers. Michigan drew Wisconsin and Minnesota out of the Big Ten West, while Nebraska drew Ohio State and Penn State from the East. That's not fun, to say the least. Iowa and Minnesota could be a critical game in the Big Ten West pecking order, and Ohio State gets the Big Ten East, Maryland and Rutgers in back-to-back weeks, so not necessarily a cakewalk, that anything is possible in college football and nothing is a given, but might be an easier week for Ohio State that week. Week 5, they have Iowa at Penn State, Indiana at Ohio State, Purdue at Minnesota, Michigan at Rutgers, Wisconsin at Northwestern, Michigan State at Maryland, and Illinois at Nebraska. Penn State gets its West crossover opponents in back-to-back weeks. Illinois does usually give them a very big, tough game. But however, in the last 3 series they've played, it has been all Penn State victories. And besides that, Michigan State will have an easier slate against Nebraska. Northwestern always has been a tougher opponent. They were actually not bad at football the past few years. And Purdue could be a sneaky game against Minnesota. They usually give them some trouble. And Minnesota's top wide receiver has opted out for the season, as we've talked about. And that should be a very interesting game. Week 6, Penn State at Michigan, Minnesota at Wisconsin, Nebraska at Iowa, Ohio State at Illinois, Northwestern at Michigan State, Maryland at Indiana, Rutgers at Purdue. Those are the games that week. And this is another difficult week for Penn State. Michigan, while it is not seen as a top-tier team, the head coach, Jim Harbaugh, gives them a lot of profile. And this will be a big game, probably the game of the week in the Big Ten, looking at the schedule, especially at home in the Big House. The Big House is notoriously one of the tougher stadiums to play in college football. Minnesota's game against Wisconsin decided the Big Ten West in 2018, and that very much likely could happen again in 2020. Week 7, we have Ohio State at Michigan State, Maryland at Michigan, Northwestern at Minnesota, Indiana at Wisconsin, Iowa at Illinois, Penn State at Rutgers, Nebraska at Purdue. This is the most underwhelming group of games on the slate by far. Iowa trip to Illinois could be a sneaky look-ahead spot for the Hawkeyes. Illinois upset Wisconsin last year, so the Hawkeyes don't want to get caught looking ahead to their final home game against the Badgers. Other than that, kind of a dull week. This might be a week to go pumpkin picking, apple picking, Week 8, we have Michigan at Ohio State, Wisconsin at Iowa, Michigan State at Penn State, Minnesota at Nebraska, Illinois at Northwestern, Purdue at Indiana, and Rutgers at Nebraska. The headliner, of course, is the game, Michigan at Ohio State. Ohio State has won 8 straight games in the series, including back-to-back blowouts. They have not defeated the Buckeyes since Jim Harbaugh's tenure began at Michigan. This could also present a chance to ruin the Buckeyes' college football playoff hopes. This is the other rivalry games happening on December 12th are Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Northwestern, and Purdue, Indiana. That's very exciting. So, what can we take away? They're going to try to cram these 9 games into 9 weeks, which is pretty intense. There is a 9th game that will be the Big Ten title game, and then, like I said, opposing divisions will play each other, so the East play the West based on rankings. They're going to try to squeeze a lot of these in, and despite how optimistic I am now for college football, there's no doubt that bye weeks will need to happen. As you saw, Tulsa had to cancel some games. Memphis has had to postpone games. Army's had to postpone games. There's no doubt that there will be postponements, and so I think we're a bit naive to think that despite all the testing they're going to be doing, all the protocols they're taking, obviously these players want to play and they're going to take as many measures as possible, that there won't be difficulties in this season with postponements. And I think we're naive to think that none of these games are going to get canceled. None of these games are going to get postponed. There's probably going to be one or two games. We might see one team have to cancel the rest of their season, which would be very sad. But it's going to be interesting to see how this goes for sure. I'm very excited, and with the Big Ten coming back, there is room for the Pac-12 to come back as well. But other than that, you guys, stay tuned, because coming up, we're going over some other big news that happened in college football this week. We got some COVID-19 updates, political updates, and more. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. Welcome back to our next segment of the week. We just spent so much time touching upon the fact that Big Ten football is coming back. Who is excited? I am so excited. And kicking off, we're going to get into some other news. Sorry, the neighbors next door have all their kids home because of homeschooling right now, and so I just heard some noise. I thought it was my mom. Nope, just the neighbors. It's funny, my dad says we live next to like a nursery or like a daycare because I think they have 10 kids in their family. That's crazy. But we're going to get into some other news that occurred this week, as well as a really interesting article that CNN released that I want to go over with you guys. I like touching on these big articles that come out, especially with the election coming up. We are about a month and a half away, I believe, about 40 days from the election. I also do want to say, speaking of that, rest in peace to RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Rest in peace to her. Her death was very impactful. It occurred last Friday. It shocked many people. It was very sad and heartbreaking. I know I felt a lot of fear with that happening. I felt a lot of uncertainty, especially because she fought for so many women's rights. I mean, in all honesty, like, I don't think I would be here doing this internship if it wasn't for her. So I want to say rest in power to her. I'm sending so much love to her family and friends and prayers. I think it's really sad that instead of mourning the loss and appreciating how great of a woman she is, we are already rushing to try to reappoint her. And I don't want to get too political in here, but yeah, I just want to say rest in power to her. We will get into that as well, but let's kick off the news with the biggest news that's non-Big Ten related or past weekend football is that Mike Novell, the Florida State head coach, has coronavirus. Florida State coach Mike Novell, he's working from home. He's quarantined this week, watching practice live through his computer to monitor and making suggestions to coaches through speakers. He tested positive for COVID-19 last Friday. He can now game plan, but will not be able to help the Seminoles in person or even remotely when they face number 12 Miami on Saturday per school protocol. So he will not be able to help the team and be there for the big game against Miami. Novell said on Monday via Zoom press conference, "I get emotional thinking about not being out there tomorrow, because everything I do is to help impact these guys and build them up and prepare them. Even though this is not the course of action I want to even occur, I still have an opportunity to make an impact." Novell said he will likely not return to in-person coaching until a week from Monday, so a week from today, when I'm recording this, as long as he tests negative and does not show symptoms within 3 days of his return. Until then, the coach is dealing with an unorthodox situation in the best he can. There are limitations with what Novell can do when working remotely for 10 days, but there are some workarounds. Novell is flipping through multiple cameras to monitor practice live while at home. He can communicate with coaches through speakers. He's part of the game planning as he joins virtual meetings with coaches and players. He can speak with the team up until it departs from the team hotel on Saturday. During the game, he'll only be watching remotely, not being able to be active during the 3.5 hours the game is taking place. "It's going to hurt," he said. Deputy head coach and Titans coach Chris Thompson will be the interim head coach with Novell absent. Thompson is 51-11 as a head coach, and he worked with Novell at Florida State. Here's what Novell said on Chris Thompson. He's done a remarkable job in his opportunity as a head coach, did an extraordinary job with the program in leading men, and that's something that I think is one of the great talents of Chris Thompson, is the way guys respond to him. He's got an unbelievable heart. He's a great teacher, a very pure soul when it comes to every aspect of what he does. I know I want him to be part of this staff, not only what he brings X's and O's, but also leadership in every other area. With Thompson going from the press box to the field for Saturday's game, FSU will have Tony Tarzak in the box. In his place, Tarzak primarily assisted with quarterbacks at Florida State, but was the tight ends coach at Memphis last season. Thompson also said the great thing about Tony is that he coached the tight ends at Memphis last year, so he's got that set of eyes and is very familiar with the tight end role. Furthermore, offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham has in-depth experience working with Novell and calling plays when Novell's attention is needed elsewhere during the games, and he'll likely be the primary play caller on offense. Novell said there's an emotional toll of being away from football and even being isolated from his family. He said he feels fine, said his wife and daughter fortunately tested negative. They are isolating at home as well. The game will kick off at 7:30 p.m. on ABC between Florida State, who was 0-1, and number 12 Miami, who was 2-0. Very exciting stuff. Prayers up to Mike Novell. No one wants to see that happen, especially given everything going on in the world. No one wants to see someone test positive for coronavirus, even in a situation like that. But let's get into our next big news, I guess you could say. I want to get into this article that was released by CNN this week that touches upon the election and Trump and dealing with all of that. Again, this is an election year, so please remember to vote. Please take this responsibly. And CNN posted a big article talking about how football got political, and it worked. I've touched on this in the past, but many of the states that were continuing to play college football before the Big Ten made its decision were red states or swing states that Trump wanted their votes in, and he did not really fight for the revival of the Pac-12 conference, because many of the teams in there are blue states or more Democratic states. There's no question about that. And President Donald Trump got his football wish. The Big Ten college football conference will begin playing in late October. I'm going to read this article from CNN, and throughout it, I will kind of touch upon it. But Trump has been pushing for the league, which has schools in Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, and Wisconsin, among others, to start playing, and has had talks with the league. The league previously announced a suspension of their schedule. It is very unclear whether this decision will actually help Trump. What is clear is that he needs the help in the swing states where the Big Ten is most prominent. Trump obviously saw a political opportunity with the concern to the Big Ten. There's a reason he focused so much of his attention on the Big Ten suspending play as opposed to the many other conferences that did. Most of these other conferences are not based in swing states, so CNN summed it up perfectly there. The Big Ten is full of swing states, and Trump needs their votes. I mean, I'm not a political expert here, but the swing states go either way, and Trump wants that. He was not alone. Former Vice President Joe Biden, who is currently running for the Democratic nomination, made ads showing empty college football stadiums with the blame landing at Trump's feet. Both nominees probably know that college football is adored in the Midwest. As pointed out last month, 51% of Midwesterners consider themselves college football fans. This is about tied with the South with the highest percentage of fans in the country. Trump probably also knows that Republicans really do like college football, as according to a study of Google's search platforms from 2017. That is, it's a good base play. Moreover, Trump is pushing for a return to normal activities and few things say normal in the Midwest quite like college football. Still, you might think that if there's a push for the Big Ten to return, something Trump has done for weeks. It will be great political play. He will see the poll numbers rise, which is very good and important for him. The polling over the last 2 weeks has been mediocre to downright dire for Trump in these states. It is really leaning towards Biden. And there has not been a lot of high-quality polling out of Michigan, though the average continues to put Trump behind Biden by a total of 7 to 8 points. Trump has been hoping to put Minnesota in play. Instead, polls released by ABC News, Washington Post, CBS, YouGov, and the New York Times / Siena College have him trailing anywhere from 9 to 16 points. Trump is also facing a deficit in Pennsylvania. Among likely voters in recent polls from NBC News at Marist College, Monmouth University, and Quinnipiac University, Trump's down an average of 6 points. And in Wisconsin, Trump seems to be trailing by the same margins he always has. A CNN / SSRS poll released on Tuesday had him down 10 points. And ABC News Washington State poll has his deficit at 6 points. The New York Times Siena Post poll put Trump behind by 5 points. So Trump has been making football a part of his political playbook. Part of his problem might right now just be that although folks like college football, they may not like the idea of it right now. A recent Grinnell College Seltzer & Co. poll found out that 53% of Midwestern residents said it would most likely be unsafe for students to attend college. Only 41% said it would be safe. Only 41% said it would be safe. That matches a Quinnipiac poll from July, assuring a majority of Midwestern voters thought opening colleges would be unsafe. You cannot reopen college football without reopening colleges to some degree. And as noted a few weeks ago, most fans were in favor of a delayed college football season. Perhaps the delay from having football start in late October instead of around Labor Day would have been enough for them, though there have been a few weeks since this polling came out. And again, the assumption might be that college football will shift the political math here. Voters might not know how much they missed college football until they see it again. But in a race where few things have shifted, it does not seem like the best bet. So what does that say? These swing states, it sounds like they're leaning towards Biden. And Trump is really trying to pull that, hey, he loves college football. He wants college football to be back. He wants this. Excuse me. Sorry, the garage is opening. He wants all this, and it's very clear about that. And so he thinks that by advocating for the Big Ten football to come back, it is very interesting. And as I've touched on for the last few months, college football has gotten political. There's no question about that. And it is very sad to see because college football feels like a pure thing from an outsider's perspective. Obviously, as I've been doing this podcast and I'm researching, and I'm learning more and more, it is not as pure as it seems. And it just kind of sucks that it has gotten so political to the point where we have the two presidential candidates, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. These two are angling to use something that so many people love, like college football, as a way to sway people. It just feels wrong in a way. I know it's not, and I know that this is a smart strategy in the eyes of some, but it just feels wrong to use something like college football, which so many people love, as a targeting poll. And I feel like if you want to sway your voters, maybe doing something like advocating for coronavirus concerns rather than the start of college football is a better way to sway your voters and have them turn out and vote. But that's just my opinion. Again, apologies, my mom just walked in on me and I had to point like I'm recording, but yes. So college football is getting political. That kind of stinks. That is not something I want to see, but it's also not surprising because given Donald Trump's reputation as a president, he will turn anything into a smear campaign and make it political in any way he can and benefit him. He is also trying for re-election in a year where there's a lot of stuff stacked up. This has been an odd year to say the least, and it'll be very interesting to see how this election goes. This is a reminder to make sure you are registered to vote. You can literally go to our amiregistered.org. It takes about 30 seconds, and you can literally check if you're registered. I did it this morning just to make sure, and I am registered. In some states, voting has already begun with mail-in voting. If you do not feel comfortable going to polls, make sure you mail in your votes by November 3rd. Please vote. It's so important, especially in this year more than ever. This is the first election I will be able to vote into, and I'm very excited to use my voice to hopefully make a difference in our country. And yeah, just please vote. Please, please vote. So not to get too political there, but college football has gotten a little political, which is very interesting to see. And again, with the start of the Big Ten, it'll be very interesting to see where that goes. But coming up, we are going to preview this weekend's games. We got the SEC kicking off. We got some big games, so stay tuned for that.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. We are back today with segment 3 of the podcast. We're going to be previewing this week in college football. We have big games coming up. As you guys know, the SEC is coming back. It's kind of crazy. I feel like every week my parents are college football fans, but they're always like, oh, was there college football this week? Because it still seems weird to them that this is happening. And I'm like, yeah, there was. And like, who was playing? And I'll tell them, and like, oh, that's not a big game. And then like a few days ago, I was like, oh, the SEC is coming back next weekend. And they were so excited. And granted, both of them did not go to an SEC school. My mom went to a school up in San Francisco, and my dad went to a tiny little school in Vermont. None of them are SEC fans, but they were like, oh yeah, college football is officially back now that the SEC is back. And the SEC truly feels like the root of football. When you think of football, you think of Alabama, LSU, you think of all that. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this week goes with the SEC coming back. But let's get into it. Here's the College Football 2020 Week 4 schedule. Thursday, September 24th, we have UAB at South Alabama. Friday, we have Middle Tennessee at University of Texas, San Antonio. Saturday, of course, we have Kansas State at Oklahoma, Florida at Ole Miss, Notre Dame at Wake Forest, Kentucky at Auburn, UCF at East Carolina, Louisville at Pitt, Georgia Southern at Louisiana Lafayette, Campbell at Appalachian State, Georgia Tech at Syracuse, Georgia State at Charlotte, FIU at Liberty, Iowa State at TCU, Mississippi State at LSU, Texas Tech at Texas at Texas Tech, West Virginia at Oklahoma State, Army at Cincinnati, UTEP at ULM, Tulsa at Arkansas State, Georgia at Arkansas, Duke at Virginia, Texas State at Boston College, University of South Florida at Florida Atlantic University, Alabama at Missouri, North Texas at Houston, Houston Baptist at Louisiana Tech, Tulane at Southern Miss, Stephen F. Austin at SMU, Vanderbilt at Texas A&M, Tennessee at South Carolina, Florida State at Miami, Kansas at Baylor, NC State at Texas Tech, and Troy at BYU. Woo! That was a mouthful. That was... I gotta like take some water, a sip of water after that or something, you guys. Wow. So guys, what does that mean? We have college football this week. We have so many games to watch. I'm so excited. If you guys did not know, on the weekends, I spend the weekends with my boyfriend, and it's always a battle because I want to watch both days of football so badly, and he's a college football fan. But his life does not revolve around college football, and so we'll wake up, and I'll be like, all right, like, time to watch college football, and he's like, why don't we, like, go to breakfast, or, you know, like, go for a walk? I'm like, no, we have college football to watch, like, I gotta watch, like, I'll be like, oh, it's for my internship, but I just really want to watch, and so this week, I'm gonna be like, there's exciting games to watch, like, you should be so excited to lay on the couch with me all day, but I thought that was funny, so... While not all the teams are back, a lot are prepping for week 4. Here's some things to watch out for week 4. Like we said, this is the return of the SEC. Very exciting. Alabama is... We're going to get into that, but Alabama was a huge thing. They did not make the college football playoffs last year. That was surprising to many. But like I said, their game against Auburn kind of ruined their chances last year. And so the Nick Saban revenge factor should be very interesting to see, especially because... You know, Tua is gone. The quarterback competition is a little dicey. It's up in the air a little. We'll talk about that. It'll also be interesting to see how LSU fares without Joe Burrow. This is their first game without their former Heisman quarterback who was the number 1 pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. He actually has been looking fantastic in games this season. He looks like a franchise quarterback for the Bengals, which is very exciting. But yeah, this will be the first game without them. If you guys remember last year, Burrow was seen as like a 6th-round draft pick, and then he went first overall. So very interesting to see, very exciting to see. But, you know, whenever a star quarterback leaves, especially same with Alabama too, and Georgia and stuff, how will they fare? Speaking of Georgia, we got JT Daniels, his first start. That's very exciting. We also have Virginia kicking off their season. And furthermore, Oklahoma State last week after a dicey game against Tulsa, in which Spencer Sanders went out with an injury. And they almost had an upset there. It'll be very interesting to see how they fare against West Virginia, a team that gives them a little competition, especially with a Big 12 rivalry. Texas at Texas Tech. We got an in-state matchup. Iowa State at TC, the TCU quarterback room with Iowa State. Will be very interesting to see. This is TCU's first game of the season as well. So they're kicking off there. Florida and Ole Miss will be a good one. Ole Miss, not known for the best teams, but Florida is very exciting. And we got Notre Dame at Wake Forest. Notre Dame has been smothering their opponents last week. This season, they had a blowout against Duke and an absolute bagel, 59-0 against USF last week. So we're interested to see that game. And yeah, let's get into 5 things to watch out for. So regarding the SEC, we got Kentucky's offensive line versus Auburn's defensive line. As you guys might know, Auburn is known for their defense. They're a stellar defensive team. And one of the best matchups of the weekend. The Kentucky Wildcats are ranked 23rd in the country. Auburn comes in 8th of the country, so Kentucky is ranked number 23. Auburn will be favored even though their team has been decimated by players contracting COVID-19. The Tigers have a solid offense led by quarterback Bo Nix and wide receiver Seth Williams, but they should have a better defense. The defense will be a strong part of the team, which will be led by Big Cat Bryant and Tyson Tercel. If Kentucky does pull off the offense, it'll be thanks to their offensive line. 2 players on the offensive line will likely play on Sundays in center Jake Jackson and left tackle Landon Young. The Wildcats also have one of the best offensive lines in the SEC, and they will need to continue to move the ball if they wish to beat Auburn and their offense. Very interesting to see. Yes, Kentucky is ranked number 23rd this year. I believe this is the first time they've been ranked in a while. Kentucky is known for their basketball, in all honesty, but it'll be incredibly interesting to see how that goes. And I'm very excited to watch Auburn. Auburn is always a really fun team for me. I don't know why. If you guys couldn't tell, I hold allegiances to schools I applied to, and Auburn for some reason is just a very team close to my heart. I kind of wish I applied there, but yeah. Number 2, we have TCU's quarterback situation. So TCU did have to cancel their season opener against SMU due to a COVID-19 outbreak on the team. This is their opening weekend against Iowa State. The Horned Frogs, there's uncertainty at quarterback position. Starting quarterback Max Duggan, who was a freshman last year, has an underlying health condition that was found during COVID-19 testing. It is believed to be a heart condition, which will leave him unlikely to play this season. Backup Matthew Downing, a former walk-on at Georgia, hasn't practiced, and there is no word if he'll be ready to play this weekend. Even if he is, this will be an interesting quarterback situation to see. Not necessarily competition, because Max Duggan was believed to be the starter. And that does kind of stink. Prayers up for Duggan, especially with the new research on COVID-19's effect on the health. But that'll be interesting to see. I mean, will they have a third-string walk-on? Who knows? Iowa State is going to be a tough matchup for them. Obviously, they lost to Louisiana Lafayette in week 1, and they're going to be looking for a revenge. Number 3 is Cincinnati's stopping Army's option. So Cincinnati will host Army this weekend. There's hope that Cincinnati can make a run on this season. Pat McAfee, the ESPN analyst and former punter of the Indianapolis Colts, he predicted that the Bearcats will make the college football playoff, which is a little dicey to see, especially with Ohio State and Penn State coming back. But Army has beaten Middle Tennessee and University of Louisiana Monroe, and their offense has not been stopped yet. Cincinnati is a much better team than those 2 previously mentioned. It will still have to find a way to stop Army's offense. They rank first in the country in rushing yards per game at 388. Cincinnati does have a solid defense, however, but stopping the triple option will take discipline. If they do, they will stay undefeated and could be a dark horse for many analysts on the countries. As seen, again, I don't know if they can make the playoff. That'll be very interesting to see. But they are currently ranked number 13. 14, excuse me. Number 4 we have to look out for, as previously mentioned, is JT Daniels' debut with the Georgia Bulldogs. So Jamie Newman was slated to start this season. He transferred from Wake Forest. And then later, JT Daniels transferred from USC to Georgia. Newman was still expected to start, but he opted out of the 2020 season to prepare for the 2021 NFL Draft. Daniels is now starting for the Bulldogs, and they likely won't be tested in their opening game against Arkansas. Daniel was knocked out of last season with a torn ACL, and Caden Solidus ended up succeeding for USC. It'll be important to see how Daniel plays coming off injury in an entirely new season. That's very interesting to see, especially because Daniels has been so regarded as he was a 5-star recruit, I believe, for USC, and so much hype around him, and then he got injured and never lived up to hype that he had when he came to USC. Lastly, a very exciting thing to look out for is Bryce Young and Alabama. Alabama has a very talented dual threat quarterback in Bryce Young. The freshman enrolled early, and many think he is the future starter of Alabama this season. However, they do have Mac Jones. He did play decently and helped. Excuse me. Excuse me. They had Tua Tagovailoa, and he got injured. The Crimson Tide didn't turn to Mac Jones to help him, but there were doubts about his play, and he was named the starter leading into the fall. However, with Bryce Young, like I said, many see him as the future of Alabama football. They play Missouri in the season opener. With Mac Jones set to start, will Young see any time and get a chance to take over the job? There's a lot of questions. Obviously, Missouri is not the toughest opponent they will face this season, so maybe it would be good to get the young freshman who enrolled early some starting reps. But once again, we will see. And coming up, everybody, we are going to look at the top 10 Big Ten football games to watch out for this season as our last segment of the day. So stay tuned for that.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our final segment today on the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It's Danielle, once again. I mean, who else would it be? You've stuck around for 48 minutes, so hopefully you stick around for another, 10, 15 minutes or so. I'd really appreciate it, but as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Big Ten is back. I'm, doing, air waving hand motions like I'm at some concert or something. I miss concerts so much. That's another side note, but the Big Ten is back. For some reason I have Big 12. It's Big Ten. That was a typo on my part. Big Ten is back. Obviously, very exciting stuff. I always wish I went to a Big Ten school. Obviously, I love my Buffaloes. I love my Pac-12. But especially this season with no college football, got ourselves at the Big Ten. Anyways, let's get into it, people. We're going to be going over the top 10 games on this season list for the conference. Granted, keep in mind, you'll see some repeaters of teams. It's obvious who, excuse me, the better teams are. I'm not trying to, discount any teams, but I'm sorry, Maryland and Rutgers. You might not be seeing any spots on here. This, is all my opinion. Let's get into it. At number 10, we have Nebraska versus Ohio State. If you guys remember, Nebraska was very set on getting a college football season. They were suing the conference. They wanted to go independent, play in another conference. There was a whole lot of options for them there. And ultimately, the Big Ten decided to come back, so Nebraska will have a team to play for, a conference play for this season. And what better way to kick off their season than facing the toughest opponent in their conference in the Big Ten. other than Ohio State, led by Justin Fields, who is now seen as one of the biggest Heisman contenders in the country. This isn't necessarily going to be a great game. I don't see Nebraska pulling off an upset here. However, it is because these two teams were the most vocal about wanting a college football season back. And it's just a college opener. It's the big game of the week for the Big Ten especially. And I'm just very excited to see how it happens. This is also kind of biased because, again, my boyfriend is a Nebraska fan, so we will be watching this game that day. As much as I would like to watch other games that day, we will be watching this game. But, yeah, I'm very excited for that. And I think it'll be a very fun game. It is Justin Fields' first game. He was very adamant about wanting the Big Ten to come back, and especially because this is probably his last season before he declares for the NFL draft. I would love to see how it goes. At number 9, we have Michigan State versus Michigan. This is going to happen on October 31st, a Halloween game. We got a rivalry game here. Very exciting. Obviously, this is Jim Harbaugh's tenure versus Mel Tucker's first season. Michigan has not really produced much under Jim Harbaugh, but it'll be very interesting to see how these two teams stack up, especially because Mel Tucker is known to be more of a defensive coach, whereas Jim Harbaugh is more on the offensive side. And that's just a fun little rivalry game early in the season. There are a lot of big games this weekend, as you will see. So it'll be very exciting to see how this happens, but a fun little week 2 game. At number 8, we have Wisconsin versus Nebraska. Wisconsin was always my dream school. It still is. I still root for them. Very fun across the border, across a few states. Rivalry. When I think of the Midwest, for some reason, I think of Wisconsin and Nebraska. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but they are just like the conference I kind of go to. I mean, like when I think of the Midwest. And I'm very excited for this game. Again, it's on Halloween. Halloween, spent at home watching college football. What could be better? But very exciting game to see. Obviously, Scott Frost and Wisconsin's defense will come out to play. They are seen as one of the contenders for the college football playoff circle as well. Sorry, my door just closed. As well as the they're expected to play in the Pac-12 championships or be contenders for that. So very interesting to see Nebraska once again, just because they were so adamant about having college football. It'll be interesting to see how they fare with their first 2 matchups against 2 very tough opponents. At number 7, we have Purdue versus Wisconsin. Like I said, this necessarily won't be the best game, but it holds a special place in my heart because this is a game I saw like 5 years ago now at this point, and it's just very special to me. And not much to say about this one, except I'm excited for it. I love Purdue. I love Wisconsin. And yeah. At number 6, we have Wisconsin versus Michigan. What an exciting game this is, you guys. 2 powerhouse contenders, 2 staples of Big Ten football are coming together. This is happening at the Big House, I believe, and this is going to be in the middle of November, so peak college football. Peak college football weather. It's going to be snowy probably. It's going to be cold. It's going to be freezing. Who wouldn't want to be there? This is happening on November 13th, I just want to say. And this is just me, a very exciting game. I believe this is happening in week 5 or week 6. Don't fact check me on that. You can go back to the earlier part in the podcast and listen to that. But very exciting. I do love Wisconsin in this matchup, however. At number 5, we have Iowa versus Penn State. So again, not what you would look at and say, wow, that's a good matchup. But Iowa has given Penn State a lot of problems. In their last 6 games, there has been a point differential of 13 total points. Penn State has won all of those, but Iowa always gives one of the top teams in the country a run for their money and grinds them to the end. This will be very exciting to see. This is at Happy Valley as well, and despite not having a whiteout and no fans there, it'll be very exciting to see. At number 4, we have Penn State versus Michigan. What a fun game, you guys. As you can tell, there's like great repeats of teams, but this is happening on November 27th. This is one of the last games of the season. Before we have the big game, which we'll get to. But Penn State, Michigan, what a classic team matchup. Very exciting to see. Penn State, again, is expected to be contender despite missing their star defensive player due to opting out of COVID-19 and the little bit of quarterback controversy with the Michigan Wolverines. But this should be a very exciting game. Thanksgiving weekend, peak football weather. Mark your calendars. At number 3, on the same weekend, November 27th, we have Minnesota at Wisconsin, a great rivalry. This is literally across the border, like 2 teams. It's like how the Packers hate the Vikings. My roommate freshman year was from Minnesota, and she always went to Minnesota to go for games, and she hated the Badgers with all her heart. So this should be very interesting to see how this fares out. But a very exciting rivalry game. This is kind of a big weekend of college football. Obviously, Thanksgiving weekend is one that everyone looks out for. And so I'm very excited for that game. At number 2, you guys, Ohio State at Penn State, a Halloween game, second week of the season. This game always turns out well. There's no doubt about that. Penn State fans turn out for this game, as we've talked about. This is without a doubt one of the most exciting games that will happen this season in college football in general. Always look forward to it. Big game on Fox. Weather's starting to get colder. Both teams fight till the end. This is a game to watch out for. And before we get to number 1, let us go over our list here. At number 10, we have Nebraska at Ohio State on October 24th. At Michigan State versus Michigan at number 9 and on Halloween, October 31st. At number 8, we have Wisconsin versus Nebraska on October 31st, Halloween as well. At number 7, we have Purdue versus Wisconsin on November 6th. At number 6, we have Wisconsin versus Michigan on November 13th. At number 5, we have Iowa versus Penn State on November 20th. At number 4, we have Penn State versus Michigan on November 27th. At number 3, we have Minnesota versus Wisconsin on November 27th as well. At number 2, we have Ohio State at Penn State on Halloween, October 31st. And at number 1, what other game to celebrate than Michigan versus Ohio State? The big game. This is the biggest rivalry in college football, without a doubt. Say what you want about Auburn, Alabama. No, this is the big rivalry. These teams hate each other with a burning passion. Every Michigan fan I know hates Ohio State. Well, it's nothing but misery for them. Hates it, hates it, hates it. This is the big game. Ohio State has blown them out in the past 6 years. So despite the not super competitive games they've had, especially with the blowouts the past 2 years, this is still a very exciting game to see for the teams. Especially it is the last game of the season before the Big Ten Championship. Michigan, if they upset Ohio State, could ruin their chances at the college football playoffs. So this is a game to watch out for, people. I'm so freaking excited for this game. And there you have it, guys. There is our top 10 list for the Big Ten games to watch out for this season. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Don't forget to leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe to us on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast. Also, do not forget to follow us on social media. It helps us out so much. I want to thank you guys all for listening to me once again chat about college football for about an hour. So much fun. I love talking to you guys. It's truly therapeutic for me, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity I have thanks to GSMC. I'm a few months into this podcast, and I finally feel like I'm getting my footing and understanding how to do this. It's still nerve-wracking every time I record, but I'm enjoying it. I'm loving every second of it, and so thank you guys for supporting me throughout all of this. I really appreciate it. And with all that being said, I will talk to you guys on Monday. Have a great night. Don't forget to subscribe to us once again and leave us a rating because it really helps us. With all of that, I'm going to go have some more coffee and I'll talk to you all later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.